Welcome back to Tell This Story. I'm Doug White, a veteran, retired law enforcement officer, and the author of Hiding in Plain Sight. This podcast cuts through catchphrases and cliches to explore the real cost of service and our path forward. Through raw conversations with those who have served, spouses, leaders, and high performers, we break the silence, we challenge the stigma, and we build purpose beyond our service. This isn't therapy, this is truth. Unfiltered, unapologetic, and unbreakable. Follow, rate, and share this show because your voice drives the mission forward. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tell This Story. Today I have the honor and pleasure of sitting down with retired Captain Chris Michael of the Cobb County Police Department. Chris served 25 years with Cobb County Police, and he ran the entire gamut of everything you would expect working in a major metropolitan area. We're here to hear his story about what he's doing now, and without any more babbling from me, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Doug, how you doing today?
Good, man.
I appreciate you having me here. So I was one of those people that never wanted to be a police officer growing up. It just kind of life, that path just took me that way. And I took to it fairly well and enjoyed it. Absolutely loved the job. Initially it was one of those, I can't believe they're paying me to do this kind of thing. And I had FTOs, and when I was in training, that would get so mad at me because I'd be out looking for things to do at the end of the shift. They're like, dude, put some blinders on. It's time to go home. And I was that person that wanted to go to every call. The worse it sounded, the more I wanted to go to it. And I did not realize that we all carry the proverbial cup, the bucket, the rucksack, whatever euphemism you want to use, that starts filling up from day one. And I was going through the career thinking I was doing fine. Had my first officer involved shooting in 2003, where we went to a house. The lady called, said the man had come and was high on drugs and was acting crazy. They had self-evacuated. I met with them at the entrance of the neighborhood. They told me what was going on. No crimes occurred, no weapons, no nothing. Just get him out of my house. So I said, go wait at this little business down in the corner. We'll go do it. We'll take care of it. Well, while we were there, he came out with a gun. We ended up having to shoot him. We're not trained to call death on the scene. So we secure, we handcuff, you know how it goes, right?
Yeah.
So we do our thing, and I handcuff him to secure him. And as soon as I do that, my sergeant sent me to do the death notification by myself. So I did. I went and did it. We got through all that. And 2004, I responded to a suspicious persons call. Ended up having two suspects. My beat partner showed up to back me up. We separated the two suspects to control them better. Mine took off running, so I took off chasing after him, and I left my partner behind with the other one, thinking, okay, well, that guy's not wanted. He's good. My beat partner will just catch up with me in this foot chase. I did not know behind me, because I couldn't hear it, that he was being shot. And so that, when I found out that he'd been shot, that was like getting kicked in the gut. That was worse than being involved in my own shooting. 2006, I was involved in a second shooting where a man had he'd gone off the rails, basically, mental health wise, was on medication, was very upset over the way life was going. And so he decided that he was going to kill his entire family and then himself. So when I walked into the room where he was actively murdering his children. One with a rock, he was hitting him in the head with it. There was a baby we found later. I didn't even know it was there at the time, but he was suffocating a 1-year-old underneath him, under the covers of the bed. So I ended up shooting and killing him. And some things transpired in that one, which will lead me into something else in a minute. But we got all the kids out. All the kids survived. We got them medical treatment. They all survived. I dealt with a fatality collision, dead infant in the back of the car, same age as my daughter. And that'll play into some of the other stuff as well, as far as the way we remember things in traumatic events. And so life keeps going on. Like I said, it's a large metropolitan department, or urban department, just outside of the metro area, about a 700-man department. So the murders, the suicides, all the stuff that you expect with that is just, it's marching on day by day. I start going up through the ranks, make sergeant, make lieutenant. And in 2018, when I was a lieutenant, I responded with one of my guys to a car fire. And it was, the report was that somebody was trapped in the fire. And as we're going to this call, we come around a curve on the 4-lane, and we can see black smoke rolling way up above the trees. And I thought, there's no way there's anybody surviving that. If they're in that car, they're not. But you don't give up. And we drove those cars at triple-digit speeds, as hard as we could get there, tried to do what we could. And there was nothing we could do. The car was fully engulfed when we got there. But the thing was the way it transpired, it happened close to her house. And the boyfriend was with her. He had run back to get dad. They came back up there with fire extinguishers. It was too far gone for fire extinguishers. So there I was looking at a man that was so deeply in shock that he was completely emotionless. The man, it was like looking at a blank slate. He was not in there anymore. And watching that fire roll, and because of the situation, we were literally on a 1-lane gravel road. So we were all the emergency vehicles were single file. So the fire department was several vehicles back and had to pull their hoses up to get to it. And they got the flame out, and the scene that was left, I don't want to get too graphic on a podcast, but the scene that was left haunted me after that. And that was when that proverbial bucket overflowed. So even though I thought I'd been progressing through my career just fine with no problems and still enjoyed it and still loved going out and doing this stuff, this one like flipped a switch. And I knew that it flipped that switch right then. And I knew this was the call that did it. So I started talking to one of our chaplains who I knew had a psychology background. And that's when he started telling me about cumulative stress. And I started looking into that more and realized that I was starting to suffer symptoms from anxiety, depression, and eventually that rolled into suicidal ideation. And so for the better part of 2 years, that's all I thought about. It was so intrusive that I could be having a conversation in a group of people and I would completely lose track of the conversation, because in my head, I'm thinking, I wonder how they would react if I just shot myself right now. I could be out driving around and come to an intersection, see a semi, coming down the road and go, if I take my foot off the brake and roll out in front of the semi, it'll look like a line of duty death. And then, people call me a dumbass, but, but my family will still get the line of duty benefits, whereas they won't get any benefits from a suicide. So that was my life for about 2 years. It's all I thought about. In the meantime, I had been going to some classes and doing this, that, and the other for various reasons, but I ended up going to the CIT class. Yeah, I'm assuming, I think CIT is a national, so crisis intervention team. So that's a week-long class, and the self-help portion of that really, resonated with me. And I started looking into more self-care. Now, it's not an easy journey. You don't just say, okay, I'm better now because I found this one class. So I'd get better. I'd feel better for a little bit, and then I'd regress, and I'd get back into it. And it was a cycle. It just kept going, and it went for years. I eventually made captain, and after about a year, I became the peer support commander, because during this process, I started seeing the importance of taking care of your troops and the effects that this job has on the troops. And I wanted to be involved in that as much as I could. Even though I was still not fully taking care of myself, I wanted to take care of my people, even outside my department. I didn't care if you were a police officer, firefighter, whatever. I wanted to take care of you to make sure that you didn't get to the point that I got to. I wanted to try to help that. So as a captain, I decided, I'm going to go to IT school, and so that I can go to the academies and teach and have that certification. So I went to IT school, and I created a class called Leadership After a Critical Incident, and used my own experiences of what not to do. And I'm not bashing the supervisors that did this or that. A lot of it was just, that's the way we've always done it, and that's all they knew. It wasn't malicious. They just didn't know any better. So I created that class, and then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, well, what we learn as children sticks with us for most of our lives. And we remember it because we learn better as children. We're little sponges. Well, so are police recruits and fire recruits. They're little sponges. They're eager to learn and get to this new job. So if you teach them that it's okay to be affected by something and say something to somebody to get help before you let it fester into that monster that we go through, then uh, they're more likely to take care of themselves throughout their career. Try to get rid of that stigma at the beginning before they even get that stigma in their head. So I started teaching that to our academy class because they were there for graduation on their last day. Their families come in to see them graduate. And so I was able to teach the recruits, but I was also able to talk to the families and say, hey, look, this is the changes that you may experience from somebody that's starting this new career. Here are some of the red flags, and make them prepared for it, because the family is just as important to this career as the officer themselves, because without that family support, where are you?
Absolutely true. And there's a couple threads I want to pull on there. And thank you, one, for sharing all of that. And I know that when we spoke on the phone last week, I was lockstep with everything that you had said. I mean, our careers were experience adjacent, and
Hmm.
I understood where you're coming from. And I've looked at the programs that you sent and that you were teaching. It's masterful. And I want to go back to the car fire on the gravel road. In retrospect, and I don't know if anybody's asked you this question, or if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. When you saw the dad devoid of any emotion, do you think that you may have seen some of yourself in him because of the way that you had progressed in your career, that you're now just dead inside? There's no emotion. You don't process anything. There's no joy, and it's just numb.
Absolutely. And that, seeing the dead 17-year-old was one thing, because my daughter was about 12 at the time. So there's not a great difference in the age of the two. And
No, and they all look like your kid.
yeah, and
Yeah,
it's,
every one of them.
I know she's going to be driving soon, and so therefore I'm kind of projecting into the future of this could be me someday. But here's this man who just lost his child in a horrific way, and you know he was there before she died, and he had to stand there and watch her die in one of the worst ways possible, was to burn to death
Yeah,
from the bottom up. It's
yeah,
I couldn't even imagine. So you know I was a couple of years, I think, before my body or my mind finally decided to purge it, because one night I just broke down. I was in the bed. I woke up and I started sobbing, and I could not stop for a good while. And my body just said, "You know what? We got to get rid of this." And then sometime later, I actually went back by the scene and saw the memorial that the family and friends had set up, the candles and the cross and all that kind of stuff at the tree. The tree still missing the bark where she hit it. And my wife was with me. I wanted her to see the scene. I wanted her to be there so that she could share with me the actual scenery in the woods, the gravel road, so she could see when I talk about it, have an idea of what I was seeing. And then that was the second time. That night I went home and went to bed, and later in the night I started thinking about it, and again just broke down crying. And I'm not ashamed to say that, I had human emotions and they came out.
yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, and you're supposed to. You know, normal reactions to abnormal situations may seem abnormal to some people, but I assure you they are normal.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said the word normal, because the things that we do, whether you're okay after a critical incident, whether you were deeply affected by the critical incident, or anything in between, is your normal.
Yeah,
It's okay to
yeah,
be okay, it's okay to not be okay, but if it's okay to not be okay, it's not okay to stay that way.
exactly, exactly. And the line of normal moves. It continues to move and progress, and that becomes our new normal. People talk about resilience and allostasis. Adjusting to that stress and becoming greater than and more powerful than, and just growing beyond. It's like going to the gym. You continue to do squats, your legs are going to get stronger. It's okay to experience those things and sit with those things and work with those things, but you have to find meaning in that experience, and you have to grow from that. And it's a choice, but you don't have to. It's a choice. One of the other things that I wanted to pull on, when you decided that you were going to go to the instructor techniques training and you were going to go to the CIT and you were going to start rolling this out to the academies, I agree with that 100%. It's part of legislation that just passed here in Florida. The recruit academies are now going to get 4.5 hours of resiliency training. And that's 4.5 hours more than we've ever had in the history of law enforcement in the state, mandated by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And I'm very proud of the legislators that got that passed. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. And they actually borrowed some of that from resiliency training that was being used in special forces groups. So enough plug for the Florida academies. But when you did that, did you get any pushback from the bosses, or did you have to pitch it to them, or did they say, hey, go for it? Or did you just knuckle down and do this in the cover of darkness and just do it on your own?
No, I developed a class, and I knew it had to be. It's a lot of information to put out in an hour and a half to 2 hours because it's in the middle of the day before they graduate. So it's kind of like right after lunch. So I had to condense it down as much as I could. But I took it to the academy director and said, "Hey, I want to teach this to the recruits." And they're like, "Knock yourself out. We'll give you that time."
Good.
Now it's my understanding that since I have retired, they have kind of faded away from doing it. There was one lady, and I'll tell you the feedback I got is, recruits as well as I do because you've done a lot of instructing. It's their last day of the academy. They're doing this. They're
Exactly.
ready to go get that dress uniform on, the class A and go get
Yeah.
graduated and get out on the road. So they're just like, there's no test to this. So I hope that some of it sunk in. But who was affected the most were the moms, because the moms would come up and say, because I tried to alleviate some of their fear, because they fear their child going into law enforcement and being killed and whatnot. So I tried to alleviate some of that with some statistics. But the most feedback I got was from previous police officers. Either they were current police officers who were there to see, their son or daughter, whoever, nieces, nephews, whoever they were, or they were retired, and they would come to me and go, "Thank you for doing this. No academy we didn't get any of this in the academy."
Yeah.
So police departments are much like the military. The recruiters are going to come on in here, son. We're going to send you around the world and we're going to let you see interesting people and do interesting things. And then when it messes you up, we're going to let you go and we're going to bring in a new recruit to replace you. And the police departments are so much the same way, where, come on in. We're going to ask you to deal with the lowest 2% of humanity. We're going to ask you to see things that people shouldn't see on a regular basis, or if ever at all. We're going to ask you to do things that are going to affect you. But when it does affect you, we're going to fire you for fitness for duty, and we're going to hire somebody to replace you. And
That is a
that's
horrible sales pitch.
yeah. But
Who
but
would do that?
but for whatever reason, we keep getting getting hired on. God bless them. I'm glad they come in. We got to have public safety. But it would seem to me that if the predictable, preventable thing, if we know it's
Exactly.
happening, why are we not fixing it? Why would a chief of police, director of public safety, commissioners, city managers not want to fiscally save officers? Because it costs a huge amount of money to hire, background check, all that stuff, new people. Then you got the inexperience that you have to start over, because there's very little that can replace experience, because that young hotshot cop that wants to go out there and prove himself versus somebody that's been there for 10 or 15 years is like, yeah, I've seen this, and they're calm and able to handle things better. Why, as a leader, would you not want to keep people that have the experience and that know the job better?
I want to point out some of the things that I've been saying over the last year since well, 8 months that I've been doing this. And that's what I've been saying. If you know this is an issue and you're not doing anything to stop it, you're complicit. I applaud you for going and doing that to the academies. And I wanted to ask you, what was the feedback? Did you see a change in the culture anywhere? But you pretty well answered that. Man, be the leader that you needed 20 years ago. And that's what you did. Where was this stuff when we were going through? And I think a lot of the times organizations, for better or worse, and I don't even know if they're even aware of it, but treating people like they're interchangeable parts or tools is not the way to go. I mean, in the academies, and I would imagine all the responder disciplines, and of course, I know basic training and military training, you're trained to go do the do. You're not trained to come home. That's none of their business. But I've always believed that it's your job as a leader. It's your moral obligation as a leader. The privilege of being a leader is to ensure your people are whole, whatever that looks like. And if they need groceries, you help them find groceries that are affordable. If they need mental health counseling, if they're having problems at home, child care, their lawnmower broke, whatever it is to make sure that your people are whole, that is your job. That's what you signed up for. It's not, hey, you were speeding. It's not doing vehicle inspections and how come your back seat's dirty. Those are things. That's not the stuff that matters. Um, and I believe that resiliency training and at least an awareness level of this stuff in the academies is where it's at, to let these kids, and I call them kids because, well, you and I are both old, and everybody's a kid to us. But these kids, they come in so bright eyed and bushy tailed, they want to save the world. And I never heard somebody in an oral board say, hey, why do you want to get in law enforcement? Well, because I want to be damaged in 10 years. Nobody says that. They want to serve, they want to help. And what are we doing to serve and help them? So I think the awareness training to let them know that these are physiological and neurological changes. This is the way your body responds to these things to save you, to protect you. It's a built-in fail-safe. And you have to understand that these are the things that are going to happen. This is what it looks like. And these are the things you can do to, as you say, empty your bucket so much as you can with whatever resources you have. And there are so many people out there nowadays, so many books, so many podcasts, so many resources to do this stuff. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the resources that you have found. I mean, you sent me your list of resources that you want to include in something that I'm going to talk about too. But your resources, brother, you got them all covered. I mean, that's an extensive list.
And found a new one today.
Really?
And the one that you sent me back when I sent you the list and you replied back, that was a new one. So they're out there and there's rabbit holes. So a good resource, when you go to their resource and look, they will have partners and other resources attached that they're working with or recommending or whatever. So I will go down those rabbit holes as well and pull those. You were on the podcast with Sam and John at A Badge of Honor. Well, I have pulled resources from some of their other guests. So if you looked at my list, you saw 2,200 taps. I watched that podcast, then I went and looked at her website and watched some of her podcasts, and talked to her for about 3 hours on the phone. And it's just another good resource. And then she works with 22Zero, and then it's just one leads to another. So that resource list I sent you,
I actually used them.
What was that?
I used 22Zero back in April of 23.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, buddy, it was like taking a boiling pot of water off that hot eye overnight. It's incredible. So,
and a couple of things is, you mentioned the physiological effects of severe stress or trauma. And that was one of the things that I talked about a few minutes ago that I get back around to is, after my first shooting, I had somebody recommend the book Deadly Force Encounters by Dr. Alexis Artwall. And it talks about those physiological effects. So that's where I learned that if you are prepared and you know the why before it happens, you deal with it better. So when my second shooting occurred, those kids were in the room, my brain made up a whole nother kid. I was describing him, saying he's missing. We got to find him. I thought he'd run off hiding. And they're like, no, all the kids are accounted for. And because I'd read that book and I realized the brain can do some odd things in those situations, I went, okay. And it didn't affect me. If I had not had that knowledge, I may have gone, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I'm hallucinating. I'm going crazy, whatever. But I didn't. So if we educate people on how the brain works and why the things happen, then they're likely to be able to process it better and go, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with me. This is how bodies react to this. So education is so important leading up to the career. And don't.
Absolutely.
Well, don't wait. Well, you'll experience, you'll figure it out. Well,
No,
why don't I tell you ahead of time? Because I don't know about you, but when I joined the Army, I went to my dad and his friends that were Vietnam veterans. I said, what is to be expected? What can I expect? They're like, basic training is a mind game. They're going to yell at you and try to embarrass you and do things to you. if they're smoking you, the push-ups and whatever, all they're doing is strength training. You're getting a free workout. Look at it that way. Don't don't get negative. Look at it positively. So, basic training was easier because I went into it with that knowledge. So it
Yeah.
works. It
And
works
the
for
bug
everything.
spray is for your tent and your gear, not for your skin because it burns. The old DEET stuff. My dad told me that because stay away from the bug spray, son. It'll burn you up. But yeah, I had the same experience going into boot camp, all the reindeer games and all that stuff. Um, I want to talk about one of the things that we spoke about, your book. Now, are you ready to talk about your book? Because I'm ready to hear about it, and I think you need to put it out.
It's definitely a work in progress. So, I had people, when I talk about some of the things I experienced, I've had several people go, "You need to write a book." I'm like, nobody's going to read my book. I'm not that important. I'm not a book person. Um, but some things transpired and whatever. So I said, you know what? I'll try my hand at it. If I get it done, if I sell one copy to my mom and dad, whatever. Maybe with you now I'll sell two. But and I do, and I made it to where there's a little bit about my childhood that just kind of sets the stage. Uh, and then I go into the career and and I didn't want a book where it was just war stories because I could just tell stories of things that I did over for 25 years. You could write volumes of books. But what I did is I took the calls that were the most serious that led to that bucket filling up, even though I didn't know that bucket was there at the time. And I lead into that mental breakdown to where the career almost got me. So the pinnacle of my suicidal time came when I was alone in my car working a part-time. And the depression it's just like I'm done. And I was about halfway out of the holster with the pistol. And in the book, I do talk about how fast the brain can process and thoughts go through your head so fast. But I thought, first of all, I thought about my daughter. She is going to have to tell people that her daddy killed himself. And whether we try to get rid of the stigma or not, there's still people that it's out there, and that is to a lot of people a negative way to die. And I didn't want her to have to deal with that. Second was, how many suicide calls have I responded to? And I used the term, you're trying to find a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Get through this, right? And help them, and was successful in them not killing themselves. And then the third one was, I am working this part-time with 3 other guys. Eventually they're going to call me on the radio. I'm not going to answer. They're going to have to look around the place to find me. And then they're going to find me in my car dead with that mess. And they're the ones who are going to have to see it, won't be able to unsee it. And they're going to have to deal with it. And I can't do that to my partners. So I put the gun back in the holster and really started, trying to get help. But a point that I'd really like to emphasize is because it's easy to give up if things don't happen fast enough to suit you. And you've seen this list of
Good message.
resources. You've seen this list of resources. I have used a few of them. It took me 4 attempts to get the right therapist. Two of the therapist, well, one of the therapist attempts was really was a setback in and of itself because we had one session and then she abandoned me and said, "Nah, I'm not going to see you anymore. You need to. I'm going to hook you up with somebody else in my office."
The VA did that to me.
So there's that, and then there's I get, like, Georgia Post has the Georgia Resiliency Program. So it's like a 3-day thing where you go and you sit and you share your stories and there's no judgment and you feel comfortable sharing it, which is great. It's something I went through. The Georgia DPS OPSS, which is the Department of Public Safety Office of Public Safety Support. In short, it's the Georgia State peer support team. So it's a statewide peer support team run by the Department of Public Safety. They put on what's called a PCIS, which is a post-critical incident seminar, which is very similar to the Georgia Resiliency Program, where it's 20 or 25 people sitting in a room, similar experiences, sharing their experiences, opening up publicly, saying things for the first time they may not have said before. And they do large group sessions, small group sessions, and then single one-on-one with a mental health professional that's attending with you. So I've been through that. I've gone through the reboot program, reboot recovery program. Have you heard of that one?
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
Okay, so Reboot Recovery Program, I think, was started at Fort Bragg, if I understand that correctly. But they have a military version, a public safety version, and a civilian version. It's faith based, and they talk about trauma and stuff like that and kind of help you get through it and heal. Healing the Heroes, I've talked with them, talked with one of their coaches. Outer Circle Foundation, I've met Matt Payne through that, and he was the one that hosted the Reboot program at a local church. So every one of these things that I go through, and I've been through some more, every one that I go through, I pick up a little piece of it. This helps here, that not so much, but this helps because not every program is 100% effective for every person that takes it. All right. So if something don't work for you, okay, that didn't work for me. Let's try something else. The point of all this is to don't get frustrated and say, well, I give up because that didn't work. There are so many resources out there now. There's clinical therapy, there's horse and dog therapy, there's outdoors adventures. I can't tell you how many resources are now taking veterans hiking, fishing. I got a friend that they do disabled veterans. They take them up to North Georgia trout fishing, stuff like that. There's so many things out there. So even if you don't want to lay on a couch, there's still therapy available for people that have been there, done it, and can help you progress through your thing. So in all of this time, even though I was still suffering from depression, anxiety, went through different phases of like nightmares. So I'd go from laying awake with that picture show of all those memories running through my mind, not being able to go to sleep for hours, to when I retired, I've been having nightmares for a long time, but when I retired, they got worse. And it got to the point where I would lay in bed fighting sleep. I didn't want to go sleep. I can't tell you how many times I laid there and the sun was coming up before I would finally lose and doze off, only to have the nightmares. But I would fight it, and finally I was like, it's not fighting it, and you're sleeping at a different time isn't changing anything. So I changed that mindset to turn the light off, lay my head on my pillow, and go, let's see what adventures we have tonight. Because it's going to happen. I can't change that. I talked with a mental health person that's a friend of mine, and asked about medication. Is there medication for nightmares? And they said there are. So I looked into those. Well, one of them is a blood pressure medication. Well, I already have blood
Yeah.
pressure issues where my blood pressure will get low. So if I take something that lower, I may pass out. So that's not effective. And I don't like pills anyway. But and there was a whole list. But then I talked to somebody else. Like they said, there's no empirical, actual evidence that these pills work for that. It may have worked for some people, like a placebo, whatever. It's hit or miss whether it works. So whether it works for you, EMDR has worked for a lot of people. Everybody I've talked with that's tried it has said it was effective. But I've talked to psychologists that said, I don't use it. I don't believe in it. I use another method. The point of all that is just to say how many different things are out there. If it doesn't work
Yeah.
for you, try something else. Don't give up that battle.
Yeah, no, there's 800,000 cops out there, and there's 800,000 different combinations of what will and what will not work, and to degrees. I mean, I've run the gamut. I think the thing for me, it was a combination of all of it, honestly. And I think my latest treatment, ETMS therapy, was groundbreaking. It was fantastic. It finally got rid of the nightmares,
Mhm.
and that was November of 24, almost a year and a half after I retired. And like you, I got much darker after I retired. All the existential issues that come along with no longer being on the path. You
Mhm.
see a patrol car, you're like, they're still doing the job. I'm nobody now. You see somebody at the grocery store, somebody on duty. Hey, I'm so and so. I used to work with you. It's like, who are you, dude? You know, I would never do that because I hated when people did that to me. There are people who do that, and it almost feels like a betrayal that you're no longer part of the organization. But that's just the nature of the job. It's going to continue to move. It has to,
Yeah.
irrespective of
And
you being there or not.
that was one of the things I was trying to do before I retired because I wasn't an expert in it. So I didn't want to teach it, but I wanted to try to find somebody that could. And we just never could get it off the ground. Was to teach people, start teaching classes about 3 years out to people who were getting ready to retire. Because it's not just
Yeah.
about having your finances straight. It's about
No.
being mentally prepared for retirement because that is a huge change. You're going from what is a relevant position to where you're making decisions, potentially life altering decisions. You're doing things, you're going to work, you're belong because it's become what you are, who you are,
Yeah.
right? To, well, now what do I do? Because I've
What am I
known
going to
some
make for
people,
dinner
and
tonight?
I mentioned it in the book, is I've known people who thought, if I don't train my replacement, they can't get rid of me because I'm the only one that can do this. I am so relevant, I'm not going to retire. And they just kept going and going and going. Eventually, sometimes until they get themselves in trouble and have to go. But what we need to tell people is, or teach them and get them to realize, is that you are not that important to the
No,
position.
you're not.
100% of the time, every single time somebody has retired thinking that they couldn't be replaced, the department kept right on moving. The job doesn't care.
Yeah, finding that out is a hard thing to have to deal with, especially if you're enmeshed or invested in the role and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That that's huge. I mean, that's a punch right to the face that you're not that
Yeah.
important. In
Yeah. You
fact,
may love the
knowing
job,
that on
but
the
it does
front
not
end,
love you.
no, it does not. And that's not because it doesn't value you or your organization didn't value you. It's just that's the nature of it. It's going to continue to move.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, that's the difference between the people and the job. The
Yeah,
people may
yeah,
miss you. The people
absolutely.
may go, okay, well, we got to struggle now to find your replacement, and they miss you. But the job itself, the department just keeps right on marching along.
Exactly. I mean, if you were that important, you would look at the line items on your budget and it would say Chris Michael one each or Doug White one each. It doesn't. It's got our payroll number. That's it. They will post your job before your obituary is posted. That's just the nature of it. And you need to understand that. And it's not because the profession hates you. That's anywhere, and the profession, the first responder disciplines, the military, every one of those things that are high drive, high allostatic loads, or when you're in one of the career fields of service, they all have a shelf life, and you need to understand that going in. Um, Another thing I want to talk about, the boards that you sit on. You're involved with a few nonprofits, and I would love for you to talk about the Creative Inc. and GotchaCovered blankets.
Okay. So, being the peer support commander at the time, back in 21, I was at my desk when we got the officer down call for a suicide, and I got up and responded to the scene because I wanted to be there for the officers who were having to deal with one of their own being down. This was a municipal city police officer who worked for a city that was within the county that I worked for, and so he lived in the unincorporated part. So it was my department that was handling it. His department people were obviously there. His chief and deputy chief had come to see, and I'll tell the family. I've told, they even say it now. I didn't go there for them. I went there for my officers. Well, what happened was I found out about one of their fundraising events, and I went to it, and I got to know them. And it was very unusual because how many times as a police officer did you ever go to a victim's house for anything, crime or death or anything, and then end up becoming part of the family with them?
Never.
It's very unusual. It was just one thing led to another. 2 days before her son had killed himself, he had sent her a text that said, "Hey, Mom, do you have any old blankets that I can have?" And she says, "Well, what do you need them for?" And he goes, "Well, it's November, it's getting colder, and I'd like to have them in the trunk of my car to give to homeless people." He was I never met him, but everybody that you talk to, he was a very caring, giving person for the community. And so through her heartbreak and tragedy, she thought, I need to do something to continue his legacy. So she took that text and said, you know what, we're going to make custom blankets and we're going to give them to police departments to give out to citizens. So that she had a really nice, in fact, that's it right there, nice fleece blanket in his memory. She had that designed and made, and she took it to his department and said, here, and for all the uniform patrol cars that are out on the road answering calls, she took them that many blankets and put in the trunk so they have them. And then she wanted to expand, and she did the other 5 cities. And then she did the county. And now we've expanded. Now we've got the blankets in multiple states and multiple countries. So his legacy, his name moves on, because they say the last time you die is the last time somebody speaks your name
Yes,
sometime in the
sir.
future, right? So with this, hopefully his legacy of wanting to help his community and help people that are less fortunate will continue moving on through this. But now what we do is, when we take it to the blankets, we don't just take them to the front desk and go, hey, there you go, see you later. We schedule to meet with the chief or the sheriff of that department to give them to him And we sat down with him. In fact, we took blankets just a few days ago to a city of about 55 officers. And we sat and talked to that chief for 2 hours and discussed peer support, mental health, the stuff we're talking about here with the pre-education. They're wanting me to go back and teach that leadership class. This chief is 100% in on the mental health, and he's going to take care of his people.
That's incredible.
So that's what we do is we use it. The blankets are given to the department so that they can bridge that gap with the community and give them in times of need. And we also have a annual, she called it a gala, but people keep thinking that it's a formal, black tie kind of thing. But really it's show up in cowboy boots and jeans because her son loved country, Western wear type stuff. So that's the theme of the party, even though she calls it a gala. So we will have our own awards ceremony, because departments will generally have their annual awards, but it's life-saving, valor, whatever, that kind of stuff, fitness awards, whatever they do. We want to recognize police officers for acts of kindness and going above and beyond. So we tell the chiefs, find out who paid rent for somebody for a week or a month, who paid for somebody's groceries. Tell us about how you used the blanket. There was one where an autistic toddler had escaped from the house overnight in sub-freezing temperatures, was headed for water, and the officers found her wearing nothing but a diaper, and paramedics said just a little bit longer of that exposure and she would have died of hypothermia, but they had that blanket and they wrapped her up until the paramedics could get there. And so there's all kinds of stories like that, and we want them publicly recognized for the stuff they're not going to see on the 5 o'clock news.
That's beautiful. Chris, when you said that, people are being recognized for valor and life-saving and all that stuff, there are, God, I'm just going to throw out a number, 100 to 1 acts of kindness versus acts of valor being done by cops and firefighters all over this country. I mean, I've got dozens of just my own personnel, the wonderful things they've done. And by doing that, have inspired me and their zone partners to do wonderful things too. So I think more light needs to be brought to that stuff, because cops have paid rent for people.
Yes.
I mean, it's amazing. Bought groceries for people. Yep. And nobody hears about that stuff.
And the thing is they're not doing it for recognition. They're not going back to the precinct going, look what I did, and patting themselves on the back. Most of these are being found. Most of these are being found out because the citizen publicly thanked them through their department. Their beat partner ratted them out.
Yeah.
Or like with our department, we did random video checks, right? Just to make sure that people were doing what they're supposed to do. And you just randomly pick videos. And occasionally these popped up as random videos. And the charge's like, that was 3 weeks ago. We didn't hear about this. And so now they can document it and we can recognize them. And the thing is how hard it is to get chiefs to all be in the same place at the same time. We've got last year, I think one chief got sick, but sent his deputy chief. But we have 6 cities in that county, the sheriff's department, the county police department, plus another sheriff from another county that was 2 hours away, and other local cities around the Atlanta area. And they were all there because we asked them to come and present the award to their people. So
that's amazing.
So if you're in a department where you don't know all your people because there's just too many of them, you don't know them by face and by name immediately, you are now you're face to face and you're recognizing this person and meeting them and knowing what your people did.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. There's multiple layers to it. So the second nonprofit is Creative Inc. And this was started by an artist who already loved his first responders and veterans and took care of them and did them right with the price and all that. But he realized that while they're laying there and he's tattooing them, that they are opening up, much like people do with bartenders and hairstylists and bartenders and whatnot. And he's like, man, they were laying some heavy stuff on me. They were opening up. Sometimes they were crying and reliving what they'd been through. He goes, man, I just had to do something for them. So now what we do is if we find somebody or somebody like lets us know you got a buddy that's struggling with mental health that was a veteran first responder, but they are just not ready or willing to go lay on that traditional couch, I can talk with them, get some background, and set them up, and they get their first 4 hours of ink for free. And while they're there, we will try to match them with a similar peer support person. So if you've got combat experience, I'm not your guy. I was never deployed, right? But if you're a career police officer, I can sit there and talk with you. So we try to have a matching peer sit there with them, encourage them to talk, let them open up, explain the resources to them, and guide them and encourage them to continue that care. You started here. The first time you say something, it hurts. The next time you say it doesn't hurt as bad. The more you say it, the easier it gets. The first time I told somebody I was suicidal, it was a college professor that I was working with on another project for community mental health. And I just felt comfortable opening up to her. She was the person I chose to say it to. And now I'll say it in front of the world if it'll help one person. I don't care. I went through it. It happened. Let's talk about this. So we try to encourage them to continue that care after they get their ink, and then guide them towards the proper resources they may need.
That's incredible, man. It's funny you say that because I got my last tattoo roughly a week and a half before I had my breakthrough, and it was a 9-hour day. So I sat there and we told funny stories, and he asked me and about what I did for work, and I spent the majority of the time talking about uh, the privilege of leadership, some of the things that we experience, and then the wonderful things that my deputies do for people, buying groceries,
Mm-hmm.
keeping the lights on, paying the late fee on the electric bill so they don't have to go without heat that night, and just really talking about the positive things that they did. And I didn't know this guy other than he was an outstanding artist, and it was just that 9 hours that we spent together, and just felt comfortable laying it out like a barber or the old days of bartender. You don't want to have a relationship with a bartender, not if you're in crisis. But man, I got to tell you, I'm going to have all the links to you, to the charities that you're involved with and all that stuff. I think it's incredible. Anybody who wants to donate to the Creative Inc. or you've got your covered blankets, find the links here. I think it's a marvelous idea. The why behind it is incredible. It's just powerful, and the impact that they're having has got to be powerful as well. Um, Chris, what are your parting thoughts, man? What do you want people to know? And
Well, I mentioned in the book that I'm writing that I use a lot of cliches, and they're cliches for a reason. And if you go to YouTube and watch Jocko or Sean Ryan, any of those kind of people, and you've got the top tier people in there interviewing with them and breaking down crying and talking about how it affected them, you see true warriors are affected by this. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a snowflake. It doesn't make you a sissy. It has nothing to do with generation, because this mental health thing has been going on for decades. The post-traumatic growth, the brain with the neuroplastic, recovery, it can fix itself like a broken bone. If you're going through it and you will get the help, you can recover from this. Just keep the post-traumatic growth going, because I am probably happier and healthier right now than I was 10 years ago. I know I was, when you can go through the darkness and come out that other side. We haven't mentioned your book, but I read it the day it showed up, and I'm not going to give away spoilers, right? Because you and I talked for an hour and a half, and I was reading going, oh my God, I can't believe he didn't even bring this up. So you got to get the book. You got to read
this
this.
is about your story, bro. But I will
No,
say the things that
well,
you
it's
were
about our
mentioning, I was
story.
like, it is. But the things that you were mentioning, I was smiling. So if you're not watching this on video, I smiled quite a bit because you were talking about, the traffic crash to the young girl, the dad being
Yeah.
there. I'm like, I get it.
And
A
what
lot
I
of the
wanted,
things that you're talking about, yeah, bro, they're hard.
yeah. So what I wanted to bring up about your book, though, is one, it only made me cry twice,
Winning.
but anybody that's struggling, read these books. The more of these types of books you read, the more you're going to see that true warriors, people that have really been through it, are saying the same thing. We've all been through it. We understand. When I speak at events, I will get people come up and go, oh my God, it's like you were telling my story. I thought I was
We're
alone. I
not
thought I was the only
alone,
one that
man.
thought this.
You're not
And dude,
alone.
you are not. You are keeping really good company because we're struggling with this. So, I would tell anybody to get your book, read these books. The parallel between your book and my book, I'm sitting there going, he's going to think I copied it. He's going to think I added to my book after I read his, which by
I
the
wish you
way,
would.
which by the way, reading your book did jog a lot of memories for me, the things that I had not thought about in a while, because as I'm reading, I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that one. So I come running in here and typed up, a new part, added to the story, just because it was things that I'd forgotten about. I guess the brain pushes things down or whatever. But, it was a good book, and I enjoyed reading it. And the more people that do this, the more people who have struggled and gotten through it and can share their growth through post-traumatic stress, the better. I wanted very quickly just to give you an example. I got it pulled over on another monitor if I poke myself in the eye. ODMP. So for anybody that's not familiar with us, the Officer Down Memorial page that keeps up with line of duty deaths. So far, currently for 2025, we're at 34 total line of duty deaths. We are currently at 50 suicides.
More than that, buddy.
So for the leadership out there, and that's just law enforcement. That's not counting the fire department, and the corrections, and dispatcher, EMS. For the leadership out there, if you have any kind of a deficiency in your department, driving, shooting, excessive force, anything like that, you go and you send them back for refresher training or give them some additional training. Yet we're losing more people to suicide than we are line of duty deaths, but we're not up to. Now it's increasing. I do give credit that there's more and more of it out there, but we're still not addressing it to the point that we should be. Give your officers the training. Stop being afraid of liability. If you're not creating the culture where they feel comfortable talking, all you're doing is ticking time bombs out there into the field. They're still having the same problems. It's still there. You're not getting rid of it by ignoring it. Or you can create that culture where they know that they can go down that other path where they go, okay, this was a really horrible call. I can go to my sergeant, my lieutenant, area commander, whatever jurisdiction refers to their people, and say, hey, that one bothered me. I need to talk with somebody, whether it's a chaplain, whether it's peer support, whether it's an outside therapist, whatever it needs to be. And they say, okay, we got you. Go talk, go get it out of your system, and then come back more healthy. It's not a liability. It's growth. They come back stronger because now they're more resilient, and they can go out there and face the next one and go, okay, I got through the last one. I can get through this one. I know how to get through this one. Let me
They have the tools.
Demonstrate how much stronger I am than I was.
That's it. You need it takes moral courage and leadership and foresight and caring about your people to create that culture where people feel safe enough to do that, instead of, I need help, but I've got to go 3 counties away to get it.
You got to sneak over somewhere so I don't get seen.
Exactly. And I get calls and texts like that all the time, and it's a shame, because you're right. If you're not creating that atmosphere for your people, for them to feel safe, then I don't know what you're doing in that position of authority. You're wasting your talent, and you're wasting your ability to touch the lives of the people that trust you to make the right decisions. But anyway, my brother, I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I think it's incredible. I cannot wait for your book to come out. I am going to pre-order. So yes, you will sell at least 2 books. I'm sure much more than that. I'll be watching you closely, man. Anything that I can do for you, I think it's great. Anybody listening to this, please go to GotchaCovered Blankets. The links will be in the show notes. Support this, because I think it's a beautiful message. It's a beautiful line. They're doing great work. The Creative Ink. Who doesn't want therapy and 4 hours of free ink? I mean, come on, you're winning all the way around. You're getting better and you're healthier, and yeah. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Tell the Story. Remember, we're stronger than before, together. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on this powerful conversation with Chris Michael. If you're a first responder, a veteran, or someone who loves one, this story matters. Share this with your tribe. Drop a comment and hit follow so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Support the missions of Creative Ink and GotchaCovered Blankets at thecreativeinc.org and GotchaCoveredBlankets.com. Get your copy of Hiding in Plain Sight at Amazon or wherever books are sold. Connect with me on any of my socials, which can be found by visiting DougWhiteOfficial.com. This podcast is powered by purpose and fueled by Polestar Coffee, roasted by veterans for those still on the mission. Place your order today at polestarcoffee.com. Remember, we are stronger than before together. We'll see you next time.